My name's Wayne, and I'm the father of Alexander Pinnock.
And I'm Emma, the same child. Nice to meet you all. We didn't know that Alexander was going to have Down syndrome. We had all the tests. The odds were what the odds were, and we probably should start playing the lottery because the odds were not supposed to be in our favour for a child with DS. And we continued the pregnancy. Pregnancy was fine, all of that. And then it was a bit of a scary birth, a bit of a moment. And I had an emergency C-section. But as soon as I saw Alex, I knew. I was just like, okay, that's fine. Obviously, it wasn't confirmed until the following day. And then the following day, the doctor came to me. Wayne wasn't there at that time. He'd gone home to get a few things. And shared that they basically spotted that our child had got DS.
Yeah, you could describe it like being punched in the guts. It was a real shock to my system. And our journey to begin with at that point in Alex's birth was different for both of us. I very much was in a stage of what I recognized back then as grieving, because it was a hard thing for me to process and understand. The grief for me, it felt like, I think it was a case of me asking myself questions like, can I still do X, Y, and Z with Alexander? And that was a world for me I did not have the answers to, because I didn't know the information or what to expect. But boy, as Emma said earlier, one of the best things we could have done was making that decision that Alexander, first and foremost, is our son. And he's not going to be seen as Alexander with DS.
We have that a lot. People talk about how they, allow black children to feel more grown up than they are. It's the opposite for Alex. He gets infantile. They think he's younger than he is, and he literally isn't. I think sometimes he's probably older than he is. And that's the thing that I think is the biggest hurdle. The only challenge at this point that we've seen with people is that they try to kind of make him a bit younger than he is. And they're not always willing to go, but their possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And so I have a big voice, and I make sure that those possibilities are endless in their voices.
She sure does. One of the things we've really come to recognize is that there is not a necessary sense of great awareness, particularly within the black community, about Down syndrome. And I think being here today was so important to us, because it's the first time for us both to experience and to come into contact with other families within the black community with children with Down syndrome. And speaking for myself, this is brilliant. Do you know what I mean? It really is, because I think back onto my own personal experience of feeling at times isolated as a father with a child with Down syndrome, and I suppose wanting to talk to other men, if I'll be honest with you, who too have a son or daughter with Down syndrome. My niece, who's studying to be a mental health nurse, as my role, I work with an alternative education as a mentor. So I was in her college this one particular day. I ran into her, and I noticed in her hand just the title of Down syndrome as a piece of paper, and I said, "What's that for?" And she says, "Oh, Uncle," she says, "I'm doing an actual piece on Down syndrome as part of my presentation." And I was quite moved by that. And I says, sorry. Whew, I wasn't expecting that.
All right.
So, sorry. That moved me. Because sorry.
Yeah. And I can understand that, because obviously we have very many generations, don't we, in our community, and we know that the language around differences can be a little bit. Representation matters. It just matters.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for the work that I'd done before Alex, I would have met nobody, I don't think, that would have had DS. I would not have been able to start the journey the way that I started the journey. I wouldn't have been able to push through, and we wouldn't have been able to allow him to be who he is.
My niece said the reason why she did that presentation was because of our son. she wanted to understand him more, and she felt it was important for her in her journey, one, as his cousin, to understand him more so, and two, to present Down syndrome as a subject, as a topic for her to colleagues, to educate the other students in the room. And that has always stayed with me, and it will do, because that really, I think it sums up to your question for me why this project is important. And she's now gone on into university now. She's just been accepted, and I think you've took something very precious there. And I'd love to see where you're going to go with that going forward. And I think if we can, if it impacts one impacts many. And I think this project has the capability of doing that, and that's my hope.